story number 2, we're going to go to Francisco. Francisco, you wrote this story. This story came out in the Florida Bulldog. Florida Bulldog is a publication put out by somebody a lot of people locally all recognize in the journalism world, a guy called Dan Christensen. And your story appeared in the Florida Bulldog. And this has to do with a Miami city commissioner who was arrested and removed from office, and he's not going quietly. So, Francisco, I'll read the headline, first couple graphs from the Florida Bulldog. Then I'll ask you to provide any comments you can. You wrote the story. You might not want to comment, but you can probably give us some good insight. So here we go with the headline. Miami Commish Alex Diaz de la Portilla facing corruption charges while his district staff skate on campaign violations. First couple graphs. Even as Miami Commissioner Alex Diaz de la Portilla was put in handcuffs Thursday for bribery and other charges, members of his city staff were the focus of a separate investigation that found that they were part of a scheme in which they did paid campaign work for Diaz de la Portilla's brother while on the taxpayer's dime. Next graph, yet they won't be facing criminal misdemeanor charges for violating a state law that prohibits government employees from double dipping, engaging in a political campaign while on duty. And the story goes on to say their boss, on the other hand, is in deep trouble. On Thursday, Diaz de la Portilla surrendered to Florida Department of Law Enforcement agents after being hit with multiple felony counts, including bribery, official misconduct, money laundering, and criminal conspiracy. Investigators also arrested lawyer and lobbyist William Riley Jr., who was allegedly in cahoots with Diaz de la Portilla and accepting $15,000 in unreported payments and $245,000 of concealed contributions to a pair of political action committees the city commissioner controlled. Wow. Where to start there, Francisco? Why don't you give the audience who maybe isn't well aware of the inner dealings of Miami politics, can you give them an overview of kind of what went on and why they finally took down this commissioner for allegedly all kinds of felony crimes?
Well, Miami City Hall is kind of like a modern day Casablanca, where graft and corruption occurs every day. And then the people that are doing it are like, I'm shocked. There's corruption here.
Right.
In this case, Alex Diaz de la Portilla was elected in 2019 after pretty much like a decade hiatus from elected office. Before he was a city commissioner, he was a state senator and then a state representative. He was even Senate majority leader during his last 2 years in office in Tallahassee. And, he came to, then in 2019, he was elected city commissioner. And this investigation basically bore fruit because the investigators were able to, follow the money. And in this case, the money was flowing from William Riley Jr., a land use attorney and lobbyist who represented David and Layla Sentner, who are a power couple from Miami Beach who own the private school Sentner Academy. And they made national headlines during the pandemic because they were requiring students to quarantine for getting the vaccine, not because they wouldn't get the vaccine. And then they also threatened to fire any teachers that got the COVID-19 vaccine because they said not enough studies have been done to support their effectiveness. In the case of Diaz de la Portilla, allegedly Riley, was a conduit for all this money that was coming from the Sentners that ended up in the bank accounts of these two committees that were supporting Alex's brother's campaigns, and also they also reimbursed Riley for Riley. I guess he spent money wining and dining Alex Diaz de la Portilla, and all of this was to get Alex Diaz de la Portilla to spearhead the successful passage of a deal between the Sentners and the city of Miami for the Sentners to take over a city-owned park and build a recreational center that they can use for their school. And of course, the park will remain open to the public. And that was the key element of the deal.
Now, Francisco, you're an investigative reporter. Like I said, you like to crack skulls. You really kind of get in there. Not to get into too many details about it, but generally speaking, during the pandemic, a lot of people moved down from California, moved down from New York, a lot of wealthy types, and they have children. And these individuals have recently moved here. They were looking for places to put their kids. So is it safe to say from all the reporting you've done and what you've heard that really it's a lucrative business to open up your own private school, and the more amenities you can offer, probably the higher tuition you're going to be able to get out of maybe one of these wealthy types who want to put their little Johnny or Jane into a school.
Oh, absolutely, Peter. We're definitely seeing, uh, a high demand for private schools in South Florida now. The Real Deal actually did a story about how there's these long waiting lists at pretty much every private school in South Florida, with all these out of towners looking to put their kids in schools, and it's determining where these parents buy houses. Like if they can get their kid inside in one of these private schools, then they'll buy a house close to that school. It's a really a fascinating time to be I guess a fascinating time, a fantastic time to be a private school owner in South Florida.
Yeah, and I've heard, and this is just speculation on my part, but I've heard from some that a grade school tuition could be about 45 to 50 G's a year to put a kid. I'm not saying this school, but generally speaking, some of these private schools out there. Hey, have you ever
Right.
heard a dollar figure, Francisco?
No, but I mean that sounds about right. 30, 45 G's. I mean, yeah, we're talking tens of thousands of dollars per year.
So it just
Absolutely.
kind of makes you wonder when you hear about a $245,000 alleged. Francisco, one quick question related to this. This isn't the first time in recent memory that a member of the Miami City Commission, and what are there, 5 city commissioners or 4
Correct.
commissioners and the mayor? It's not the first time that law enforcement's been investigating or there's been any kind of court actions related. It makes me think of the mayor, Francis Suarez. Also makes me think of Commissioner Joe Carroyo, who've all been tied up in legal actions in recent memory. Any kind of insight you might be able to provide related to that?
Um, well, as I mentioned before, Miami City Hall is like a modern day Casablanca. You have all these different scandals going on with Francis Suarez. There's there was a state ethics complaint filed against him for allegedly accepting freebie tickets to these VIP events, including the Grand Prix of Miami and the World Cup. In the case of the Grand Prix event, the mayor claims that he reimbursed Ken Griffin, the billionaire hedge fund manager who hosted this party at the Grand Prix. And so has, and Griffin has also claimed that, Suarez paid his own way. Suarez is also allegedly under investigation by the FBI uh, over this $10,000 a month gig he had with a Coral Gables developer, Rishi Kapoor. And then you had Joe Carroyo getting hit with a $63 million verdict earlier this year, uh, for allegedly harassing and violating the civil rights of Little Havana developers Bill Fuller and Martin Pania. And this is just the latest saga of corruption in Miami. Every generation seems to have their scandal. There was obviously one of the most famous one was probably the case against Art Teal, the city commissioner who ended up committing suicide in the lobby of the Miami Herald. He was the target of a public corruption probe at the time he committed suicide.
And Francisco, weren't you the one who was breaking that story?
Um, I didn't break that story, but I did write an extensive, cover story about what was happening to Arthur Teal at the time of his death.